Okay, so let me tell y'all what went down at Microsoft Bethesda presentation Sunday. Okay, and I'm gonna tell you three things that I took from this presentation that I'm looking forward to. But before we discuss that, let's talk about their presentation from last year. I thought this presentation was much better than last year's presentation. Last year's presentation was a bunch of fluff, a bunch of filler, and not a lot about the games. Okay, not even showing gameplay and things of that nature. Okay, this year it was more consistent. It was more solid. It was more stable, and the the star of the presentation was the games. Now, Microsoft has done a lot of things since last year's presentation. Okay, they've been buying studios left to right, and their biggest acquisition was Bethesda. Now, when they bought Bethesda Studios as well as the IPs. Okay, and a lot of people were talking about, okay, are these IPs still going to be multi-plat, or they're going to be exclusively for Xbox? And Phil Spencer came out with a statement saying that basically they're going to take it on a case-by-case basis on each individual game. Meaning there's going to be some games that's going to be exclusively to Xbox Game Pass. There's going to be some games that's going to be exclusively to Game Pass and PC, and they're going to be games that's going to be multi-plats, that's going to be appearing on all devices. Okay, so they're taking it on a case-by-case basis. Now, the three games that I'm looking forward to, and they showed the most quote-unquote gameplay footage, was Halo. The multiplayer is still scheduled to drop this summer. And the multiplayer is going to be free to play, which is a good thing. So anybody that has a PC, anybody that has an Xbox can get to enjoy Halo for free. Now, you know it's going to be loot boxes in Halo, because that's how they're going to make their money. They're going to have season passes. That's how they're going to make their money on that, as well as DLC, skins, celebration poses, things of that nature. That's how they're going to make the money on the Halo multiplayer. Now, they showed a ton of footage from the multiplayer. Graphically, it looks great. It looks stunning. But it was only a small teaser. It don't really go into where they have classes, the type of weapons you're going to be utilizing. But still, it still looks like a solid multiplayer game, and it's free to play. Okay. Now, the next thing they talked about was the Halo campaign. They didn't really go into no trailer of actual gameplay footage of the Halo campaign, but I will say that I don't think much is going to change from this campaign. The resolution is still not going to be up to par. The graphics are not going to be the graphics is not going to be up to par. It's going to be rendering in the background. Instead of rendering a lot slower, it might render a little bit faster. But that's the price you pay when you want an open world game. And this latest Halo campaign is an open world game. It's still going to look sort of cartoonish. There may be some resolution buffs on some of the characters, like Craig, and then like everyone made a mockery of Craig. But in all, the game is going to pretty much look a little bit better than what we saw last year, but it's not going to be significantly better. Okay, so I think everybody should curve their expectations. There's not a lot they can do with the campaign because it's open world and it's running on the same engine. And then the only way you're going to see something different if they just totally just kibosh and just tear down the campaign and just start from scratch. And that ain't happening, folks. That is not happening. All right. But we're just gonna have to wait and see how the campaign is gonna look. I don't think it's gonna look any much better. This is a similar type situation they was in with Crackdown. A lot of people didn't like Crackdown when they premiered and showed some actual gameplay footage of it. A lot of people were upset about it, and they went back into the lab and tried to buff up the resolution and the graphics, and it still looks pretty much the same from what they shown at one of their presentations. And Crackdown had a quick death, okay? And the multiplayer didn't last no more than 2 months, and everybody just dropped it like a bad habit, all right? So we're just gonna have to wait and see about the campaign. Will people play the campaign? I know definitely they're gonna play the multiplayer, okay? So the next thing they talked about was Forza Motorsports. Forza Motorsports always looks gorgeous. It looks beautiful. It looks breathtaking. Their graphics are phenomenal. They also talked about they're going to have new features in this latest edition of Forza where you can build a track. It's going to have mini games with Forza Motorsports. And they're going to have a slew of new cars and trucks that you can drive, which is the stable of Forza Motorsports. It looks breathtaking and beautiful. But Forza Motorsports always looks this way, okay? Another thing that they talked about was a lot of the games that was once Bethesda's IPs. Now they're Microsoft Bethesda IPs, and they went into details about the upcoming games that's coming from Bethesda Studios. I feel like the majority of this presentation was centered around Bethesda, and a lot of these games that they premiered were just CGI trailers. They didn't have actual dates, and a lot of these games are not going to come out for like maybe another 2 to 3 years. Okay, they didn't even talk about the Indiana Jones game or the Perfect Dark game, because they only show trailers of both of these games, and I'm assuming that these games are still in development, so we got a ways to go to even see these games. They say it's 3 years down the road. I feel like it's like maybe 4 or 5 years down the road with those two games, as well as some other games. They also talked about and showed off Diablo. They showed off Elder Scrolls. They showed a bevy of Bethesda games. Now, I applauded Microsoft with their acquisition of them acquiring Bethesda Studio. However, Bethesda Studio is not on the same par as Activision. Okay? They're not on the same par as EA. It's not a big time popular studio. Okay? And those just those two studios alone always come out with games that people are willing to spend and pay full price for. $60, $70, and in some cases, in a lot of cases, people get the special edition ones that cost up to, and they start at $100. Okay, so it's not like they bought Epic. It's not like they bought Activision. It's not like they bought EA. They did buy Bethesda, and Bethesda is not in that stratosphere or in that catalog, okay, where you can say, oh, okay, Microsoft bought EA. Well, that tips the scales more so to Microsoft as, running the gaming industry, okay, where people have to pause for a second and go, yo, they got Activision, they got EA. Well, why am I buying a PlayStation 5? Okay, that tilts the balance of power to their favor. They got Bethesda. Bethesda makes a lot of great games like Wolfenstein, okay, Fallout, okay. Those are great. Those are good games, and they got a huge following of people who support these games and play these games. However, these games are not on the same stratosphere as a Battlefield or Call of Duty or Fortnite or Madden or an NBA 2K, or even in some cases an NBA Live. Okay, the traditional games that come out, the Assassin's Creeds, they're not on that level. Okay, so which those games have a bigger fan base and a bigger community than a lot of these games that Bethesda create, and now Microsoft bought Bethesda. Okay, at the end of the day, I think it's a solid buy for them. That means more games in the catalog for Game Pass, meaning that there's more interest in Game Pass. People who are Bethesda fans, instead of buying the game full price, they're going to just buy Game Pass, and they can get their hands on those games. Okay, so the Bethesda acquisition, I feel like it's a solid acquisition. However, I just don't think it's in the same scale or in the same range as an EA, an Activision, an Epic, whatever. Okay, you fill in the blanks. A lot of the Bethesda IPs are not as good or better than a lot of exclusive titles for Sony, like Guerrilla Games. Like like several of their the people that make exclusive titles for PlayStation. I had their name in my mind, but I've instantly forgot them. I apologize. The creators who make Uncharted and The Last of Us, they're not even in their stratosphere. Okay, you guys know what I'm talking about. So, but it's still in all, it's a decent buy. It's a solid buy, and it's now more than ever, people are going. People that love those games, instead of just buying the game full price, they can buy the game. They just buy the service, and they get a multitude of a lot of these games. Now, here's another thing a lot of people are not talking about, and I'm gonna go ahead and say it out loud. Microsoft is notoriously known for changing plans midstream or when it's not working. Okay, when Microsoft wanted their consoles to be an all-in-one device, and that's what they was focusing on. When people were not buying the consoles, they changed the strategy and changed the plan to make the console the most powerful console. And when it didn't, equal a lot of sales because the PlayStation was still beating it, even though it was the most powerful system, they changed the game plan once again about, well, let's just make the best exclusives. Let's make more exclusives than Sony. And when that crashed and burned, they changed the plan to now Game Pass. So, well, let's just say 2 or 3 years down the road, Game Pass is not hitting like they want it to hit. It's not getting the subscribers that they want, and they're hemorrhaging and losing money because of Game Pass. Okay, will Microsoft change midstream into another business plan? And how does that affect the games that are 2 or 3 years down the road, like The Perfect Dark? Okay, or like the Indiana Jones game. Are those IPs still going to be exclusive to Game Pass? What if they just stop doing Game Pass because Game Pass is not successful? Now, what you gonna do with those games that's 2 or 3 years down the road? In some cases, 4 years down the road. Okay, are they still exclusives to the Xbox console? What if they done completely abandoned the console business? They're no longer into competing with Sony and Nintendo as far as the console making business. They're more into the service. They're not into the system. They're more into the service. Well, what if the service is not profitable? Okay, you can't just go back into the console making business because you done abandoned that. Okay, so these games that are down the road, like the Indiana Jones, the Perfect Dark games such as that are 3 or 4 years down the road, are they going to still be exclusive? Or maybe Microsoft changed their way into a company that creates games, that creates IPs, that these same games you can play on whatever console, on their app or on their console or however, And you can also experience these games on other devices, such as other consoles. Okay. And that's like, but if things don't work out the way they want them to work out, there's always a plan B. Every company has a plan B. And if Game Pass is not uh, profitable, then they will gravitate to plan B. And they will scrap Game Pass and scrap making everything exclusive to Game Pass. And now these games are going to be multi-plat because you want to get the most money for these IPs. You want to make the most profit because of these IPs. Okay. And like I said, a lot of people are not talking about that. Everyone's talking about how Game Pass is doing this, Game Pass is doing that. Okay. What if Game Pass is not hitting? Do Microsoft go into a completely different direction? They have been known in the past to do that. So that's something a lot of people are not talking about. But overall, this presentation was a solid presentation. But at the end of the day, a lot of these games, we're going to have to wait and see how much of an impact these games are. And we're also going to have to wait and see with these new acquisitions, does it help Game Pass or does it dilute Game Pass? Okay. And that's much further down the road. Okay. So overall, I would give this presentation a solid A. The Microsoft Bethesda presentation. I feel like this presentation is going to be the biggest presentation that comes out of E3. Okay, I think it's gonna be bigger than day 1, 2, and 3 of E3, in my opinion, unless something is shown that you did not see at Microsoft or Bethesda. Sony is they don't do business with E3. Nintendo has their own presentation, the Treehouse presentation that plays alongside E3, but you can just watch it simply on their YouTube channel. So I feel like this is going to be the biggest story coming from E3. Okay, but tell me what you think. Rate, comment, subscribe. Eat your boy. I'm up out of here. Deuces.